Luigi Ghirri was born in Scandiano in the Emilia Romagna region of Italy in 1941. Ghirri is a seminal photographer, but he had a different approach to many of the photographers we've discussed here before. This is partly because of his professional background. Whereas many street photographers begin as artists, Ghirri started life as a landscape surveyor, mapping land earmarked for development on the outskirts of towns like Modena. Italy's economic miracle in the 1950s and 60s saw rapid urban expansion. Whereas Italian towns had always been tightly clustered, the post-war development of suburbs stretched well beyond their historic boundaries. As a photographer, it is the suburbs that Ghirri is most synonymous with. This image of a housing estate in Bitonto near Bari is a good example. Through an economy of elements and careful composition, Ghirri reduces the amount of visual information in the frame. He stands some distance from the car, creating space around it, while the absence of strong convergence towards a vanishing point limits the sense of depth. He further simplifies the image through a restrained palette of muted colours and low contrast, adding a sense of unreality. The simplicity of the post-war architecture reinforces this sense of reduction. There is an overall feeling of stillness, yet the open car boot introduces a suggestion of activity, hinting at something happening beyond the frame. In the 1980s, Ghirri applied this restrained approach to the historic fabric of Puglia in southern Italy. Puglia, published by MACK Books in 2023, features a selection of these images. This photograph was also taken in Bitonto. As in the previous image, the car is centred within the frame, some distance away and surrounded by space. It is photographed head-on rather than obliquely, with little dramatic recession. In the next image, the wall on the right is disproportionately large, while the leading line is cut off by another wall sloping diagonally in from the left. The effect is to flatten the image. Here, Ghirri divides the frame down the middle rather than into thirds. On the left is an alleyway and on the right a flight of steps. Both lead towards the middle distance, but neither carries the eye any further. Ghirri challenged many of the traditional conventions of street photography. For example, there are fewer leading lines. He'd often centre images or divide the frame rather than using the rule of thirds. There are fewer people interacting with the elements within the frame to create a decisive moment. Ghirri, in his compositions, was deliberate in his restraint, and it's this restraint that makes his work so compelling. It does something else. Street photographs often revolve around people. However, they're visually expensive within the frame. They bring a lot of information, facial expressions, personality, emotion, clothing even, and their relationships with other people. Ghirri often decides to leave them out, but hints at their presence. For example, this image in Alberobello singles out a broom, a beaded doorway and a bike. It's as if someone has just left or is about to emerge from the door. By keeping people just outside the frame, Ghirri creates both visual space and space for the viewer to think. For example, here we're in a narrow, whitewashed alleyway in Bitonto. You're confronted with a wall and you can't see around the corner. You notice the texture, but your eye is drawn quickly to the shrine in the top right. It has a small drawing, a bunch of flowers and some candles. If you look at the image for any length of time, you can't help but ask questions. Who is depicted in the drawing? Are the candles lit every day and by who? Why is ritual important? By focusing on the landscape, Ghirri leads us to consider why we live as we do, and I find it surprisingly compelling. Perhaps what is most striking is how little Ghirri needs to make his photographs compelling. Steps, doors, windows, a bike, a plant pot are all things we might walk past without noticing them. But through Ghirri's careful framing, they become important subjects in their own right. Ghirri also turns away from Italy's famous centres and towards its periphery, including the post-war housing estates that he encountered as a surveyor. They're not glamorous, but they are real, and he sees an aesthetic in them. The idea of the periphery is an old one. From antiquity, European culture has often defined itself in terms of the centre and its margins. By focusing on the periphery, Ghirri suggests that it may tell us something about a country that its cultural centres cannot. Perhaps this is as relevant now as ever at a time when cultural centres can feel remote for many. when Milan may have more in common with London than it does with Italy's provincial towns. Ghirri's work makes urban space the subject. It's not that humans are absent, it's that their presence is expressed through the man-made environments they leave behind. This makes Puglia a far more profound book than it first might appear.